Christy Leanne Davey was born in Escondido, California, and was the youngest out of her 5 siblings. Christy's mother was struggling with personal issues while Christy was young, and when she was 2, she and her siblings were sent to live with their grandparents' home in Yuma, Arizona. Christy's grandparents had other grandchildren living at their house at the time, making Christy one of 9 children living there. Her rocky childhood made Christy grow up fast. She was drinking coffee with her grandfather at 5, and often stepping foot into a motherly role, mostly with the neighborhood animals. Her family reminisced of a time when Christy stole a batch of eggs from her neighbor's chicken farm, in hopes of keeping them from being eaten. Her sister, Tamala, stated, "She brought them home, and they hatched. She had them in her clubhouse, and they had to come ask for their chickens back." At some point in her early teens, Christy was relocated to live with a foster family in her home state of California. While living in San Diego, Christy became pregnant with her first child at the age of 15. Things became rough for Christy around this age. She was having hard time dealing with young motherhood, and sought out ways to cope, leading her into a life of methamphetamine addiction. Once she was deep into this addiction, a woman who was about 12 years older than Christy introduced her to a man who would later lead her into sex work and become her pimp. Tamala recalls a day when Christy was about 16 years old. When she showed up knocking on Tamala's door, she begged Tamala to please take her baby, as well another woman's child. Looking over Christy's shoulder, she saw 2 men sitting in a car, waiting for her. She's like, "Tamala, you need to take the babies or they're going to come in the house." And she was crying. She didn't want to go. A year later, Christy put her child up for adoption. But things didn't get easier for her. She was in a relationship with an abusive partner, who sold her to other men and physically abused her. Her sister stated that Christy had a difficult time detaching love from abuse, which kept her in this repeating cycle. When Christy was pregnant with her second child, she was hit by a vehicle. While in the hospital, she told Tamala, who was visiting from Phoenix, that not only was she hit by the car, but that her boyfriend had physically assaulted her as well. At this point, Tamala decided to intervene, and took Christy home to Phoenix with her. The pair spent about a year and a half raising Christy's daughter together, and things began to look up for the young mother. She was focused on raising her child to the best of her ability, and her daughter inspired her to become her best self. She had full-time employment at Wendy's, and was working hard to get her GED. Things went downhill once again when Tamala was offered a job promotion in Las Vegas, and she needed to relocate. Tamala made sure that Christy was set up with a secure apartment before she moved. Yet, Christy never actually moved into it. She told her loved ones that, instead, she would be moving in with a boyfriend. However, this wasn't the case. Christy was actually homeless, and had succumbed to her former addictions. After the birth of her 4th child, her family stepped in to help, finding the children a home where they could all grow up together. I think it's important that we realize that at least she didn't drag these children through all of this. She made the right choice. Put them in the right place to give them the best life that they could have. Because she knew she couldn't do it. The murder. Tamala's last conversation with her sister took place on February 29, 2016. The call lasted for 42 seconds, and Christy happily spoke of a bed opening up at a nearby rehab, and how she was eager to fill it. Tamala spoke of how Christy seemed so motivated to turn her life around again. At the time, she was 3 months postpartum. Christy was last seen alive on March 2, 2016. On March 9, 2016, workers at the Phoenix recycling plant were sorting through items on the conveyor belt when a woman's clothed body came down the line. The workers contacted managers, and in turn, the managers contacted police. Some sources say that the body was intact, while another source claims that the woman had been dismembered. What police did know is that the death was considered a homicide, based on a physical examination of the body, and they believed that she had been murdered elsewhere, before being brought to the recycling plant in 27th Avenue and Lower Buckeye Road. This recycling plant services over 390,000 Phoenix Valley homes. It took days to identify the woman as 24-year-old Christy Davey. After an autopsy was conducted, it was concluded that Christy had been shot in the head and dumped into a recycling bin at another location. The investigation into Christy's death started out strong, with leads piling in. They held interviews with potential witnesses and suspects, and in one case, gathered DNA from an unnamed ASU professor. It seemed like the investigation quickly came to a standstill. However, authorities did interview an unnamed woman months after the discovery of Christy's body. They believe that this woman likely has knowledge about the murder, both about who killed her and why. This woman, however, claims that she has no information pertaining to the case, and stated that she barely knew Christy, despite having frequent contact with her. Another woman was looked into after making a strange social media post days after the discovery at the recycling plant. This woman, who Christy had known, posted a video saying, "That's what we do with these WB. We throw them away like trash." The investigation into this woman is unknown, but it seems clear that some people living in the valley appear to know what had actually happened to Christy, and who was responsible. Closing. It has been 6 years since Christy was killed, and her family is still keeping her name alive in the media, hoping for justice. They speak of how her 4 children now have to grow up without their mother in their lives, taken away from them just as she was starting to gain her strength to get clean. Christy was far more than her addictions. She was described as always smiling, quick to make her loved ones laugh, and as someone who constantly saw the good in people, despite how so many people proved her otherwise. She was motivated to raise her children in a stable home, and was just getting her bearings in order to do that, before her life was cut short. Links. Silent Witness. Yahoo article. AZ Central. 12 News.